Now, as I understand it, South Africa's labour laws have long been built around the principle that unfair dismissal protections apply to everyone, regardless of rank or salary. But a proposed reform could change that by limiting reinstatement for high-income earners and pushing them instead towards capped compensation. Now, supporters would say this reflects the realities, I guess, of senior leadership roles where trust and strategic alignment matter, but critics are going to argue it creates a two-tier workplace where the higher you rise, potentially, the fewer protections you keep. Someone who's applied his mind to that, and we have spoken to him on the program before, Chairman of Global Business Solutions, Jonathan Goldberg. Welcome back to the program. If dismissal is unfair, why should reinstatement suddenly become off limits for executives, if I understand the argument correctly?
Thank you, and nice to be back in your show, Jeremy. I think in labour law in South Africa and throughout the world, we have different protections for different classes of people. I think that is something that we're used to and is logical. So take an example, our law in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, if you earn below a threshold, then you have to get overtime, a lunch break. You're protected in terms of not being able to work more than 45 hours a week. So already in our labour law, we have different protections for different classes of people. Labour law, as we know it, and access to bodies like the CCMA, where you can go for free if you feel unfairly treated or unfairly dismissed, should really be open for people that are vulnerable, where, again, the higher you earn, the more you can contract when you take on employment. In a skill shortage environment, which we are in South Africa, more and more people should spend more time contracting to say, listen, Jeremy, if your company doesn't want me anymore, I'm fine with that, but then you must pay me out 6 months compensation. Happy with that, and that should be a contract. So we see that throughout the world. Of course, if you talk about America, there's no real protection for dismissal. So again, some people would say that's the success of America, that effectively you can be terminated and quite quickly on notice without this long, rigorous process that we have in South Africa. And I think that needs to change. So again, I think protections for certain class of employees is fine. Here, of course, you'll get compensation. It'll be capped to 1.8 million rand. But at sort of the 2 million rand mark, I think you should be able to negotiate your exit. The real problem is if you've seen and acted on boards, and many boards I've sat on, I think once a board loses trust of an executive, it's very difficult to regain that. And I think contractually, instead of litigation, instead of a long process, people should just agree on notification via contract in respect to saying, well, if you don't want me, then effectively, as long as you give me X amount of months notice, then I can find another job. And Jeremy, what is amazing effectively, and I keep on debating this with people, if you're really that good and have got that skill, why would you be scared to lose your job? And that question remains unanswered, because the people that are really good can walk out tomorrow and get another job tomorrow. And I accept we are in a different scenario with AI and people losing jobs, but the people that are reskilling themselves and the programmers that are losing their jobs are in high demand for other jobs. So skilled people and people who continue to reskill themselves and perform will always be in demand.
Jonathan, procedurally then, does it make it cheaper and maybe even easier to push out senior people that the company simply doesn't want anymore?
Yes, I think it does. I think it definitely does. I think, but again, having represented employers for 35 years in this country and abroad, I've come across very few cases where if you're really good and you've got the skill, that the organization doesn't want you. And if they don't want you, I keep on saying that to people that I come across where their organizations are not looking after them, saying sharpen up your CV, get it out there and find another job. Because again, I think people with skill and performance and track records, they can get those other jobs. And if you agree on a termination clause, specifically if you're skilled, I'm a big fan of longer notification clauses, which work both ways. So if you've been retrenched, the company would have to give you a longer notice period, which helps you as an employee. I think there's nothing wrong with this. I think it's a step in the right direction. And it comes with another piece of legislation change, where in the first 3 months of employment, no matter what you earn, you'll be able to terminate, provided it's not discrimination. Both these amendments come with a catch saying if it's discrimination or protected disclosure, clearly you'll still get the protections in terms of labour law. No discrimination and, of course, no protected disclosures. In any other circumstances, cap on compensation, and in the first 3 months, no need to follow procedure. Just don't like you, Jonathan, so effectively we'll need to part ways.
I fully understand your argument, and I accept that it gets very cold at the pinnacle of a company. But Jonathan, what stops this principle from slowly moving down the system to cover more and more employees?
I don't think that'll happen. I think what you should do in South Africa, if we're all worried about the real big problem we have, and that's youth unemployment, we should, to my mind, have the first 12 months of employment, that if I don't like you, Jeremy, I should be able to get rid of you, provided it's not discrimination. Because the catch-22 is these poor youth can't get experience. And if employers were prepared to take a chance without having a complicated procedure in terms of dismissing a person who potentially is not performing, or a person who's coming late, and a person who's not really valuing that job, I think you'll get a lot of employers taking chances with a lot more employees. And on those employee CV, at least you've got some job recognition in terms of they've done a job and they've got some experience.
Often this comes down, again, at very senior level to a breakdown of trust. But Jonathan, doesn't that also happen at every level of the business?
I think more so at the executive level. So having sat on so many boards and chaired many boards, effectively, I think a board is very dangerous if you can't trust your executive. Because, you meet 4 times a year, you get a pack before you meet, you've got to go through this pack. And you can be presented and be seen. The Stynoff's a classic case, where if you presented rubbish and your executive's got alternative motives, you're in real big trouble as a non-executive director. So I think once the trust starts to be broken down, it's very difficult to repair. So I think there's got to be a way that we don't have litigious process around this. We agree on terminations up front. I always believe that the divorce contract should be signed up front. Then there'll be less litigation and less stress.
It's one way of putting it. Jonathan Goldberg, thank you very much indeed, Chairman of Global Business Solutions.